You don't hate people. You just don't trust what your nervous system predicts they'll do next. You tell yourself you're selective, that your standards are high, that most people are draining, fake, unpredictable. But the pattern isn't about preference, it's about protection. And protection doesn't ask for your permission. It activates automatically. Somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned that closeness equals risk. Not dramatic movie scene risk, subtle risk, misattunement, rejection, being misunderstood, being too much, being not enough. So now, before your conscious mind even forms an opinion, your threat detection system has already scanned the room, assessed the tone, measured the facial microexpressions, and quietly decided, not safe. This isn't personality, it's conditioning. Your nervous system operates on predictive coding. It constantly compares the present moment to stored emotional memories. If a voice tone resembles someone who once dismissed you, your body tightens before you realize it. If someone gets too curious about you, your chest contracts. That contraction feels like annoyance or boredom or judgment, so you interpret it as disliking them. But what you're actually feeling is activation. Research on attachment conditioning shows that early relational experiences shape how the autonomic nervous system responds to intimacy. If closeness once felt inconsistent, critical, or emotionally unpredictable, your system adapts by reducing exposure. It becomes hypervigilant. It favors distance over uncertainty. That adaptation is intelligent. It worked. This is where it gets interesting. The same mechanism that once kept you safe is now filtering out connection before it has a chance to prove itself. Your brain is not asking, is this person good? It's asking, do they resemble previous danger? And resemblance is enough. The brain's amygdala can fire within milliseconds, well before conscious evaluation. That's faster than thought. Which means by the time you say, I just don't vibe with them, your body has already closed the gate. You call it intuition. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's trauma imprinting disguised as clarity. Think of your nervous system like a smoke detector that became overly sensitive after one real fire. At first, it saved you, but now it goes off at burnt toast. The alarm feels real, the panic feels justified, but the current threat isn't proportional to the response. So you withdraw, you analyze, you detach, you find flaws, you stay independent. And independence feels powerful. There's a certain control in not needing anyone, in being the observer instead of the participant, in telling yourself you simply don't tolerate superficiality. But beneath that control is a regulatory strategy. Distance keeps your heart rate steady. Distance keeps you from anticipating disappointment. Distance prevents the old feeling of emotional exposure. Most people misunderstand this about themselves. They think dislike is a cognitive judgment. Often, it's a physiological defense. Your prefrontal cortex can rationalize anything your nervous system decides. That's confirmation bias at work. Once your body flags someone as unsafe, your mind collects evidence to justify the verdict. They talk too much, they're too quiet, too confident, not confident enough. The reasons vary, the pattern doesn't. And the pattern is simple. Proximity increases vulnerability. So your system equates vulnerability with loss of control. But here's the subtle shift you may not want to hear. When you consistently distrust people, your nervous system never gets corrective experiences. It never gathers new data that contradicts the old blueprint. Avoidance feels stabilizing in the short term, but it freezes your relational template in the past. Neuroplasticity requires exposure, not reckless exposure, not blind trust, but regulated incremental engagement. Without it, the threat circuitry never recalibrates. It keeps running the same outdated software. You might pride yourself on reading people quickly, on spotting red flags, on not being naive, and that discernment has value, but hyperattunement to threat can distort perception. Studies on negativity bias show that the brain gives more weight to potential harm than potential reward. That bias kept our ancestors alive. It also makes modern relationships feel riskier than they statistically are. This is the moment most people resist, because if your nervous system doesn't trust people, it also doesn't trust hope. Hope implies investment. Investment implies exposure. Exposure implies the possibility of hurt. So instead, you maintain emotional minimalism. You show enough, you share enough, but not the part that would sting if mishandled. You think you dislike people, but what you actually dislike is the somatic memory of being unprotected. There's a difference, and that difference matters. Here's the metaphor that clarifies it. Imagine your nervous system as a security team guarding a museum. Once a valuable piece was stolen. Since then, the guards have become aggressive. They scrutinize every visitor. They assume hidden motives. They restrict access to entire wings of the building. The art is still there. The beauty is intact, but hardly anyone gets to see it. The guards believe they're preventing loss. They don't realize they're also preventing experience. Around this point, something uncomfortable surfaces. If you don't trust people, you also limit the ways you can be known. And being known is different from being observed. You can be surrounded by people and still be structurally alone. That loneliness doesn't always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels efficient, clean, undemanding. But over time, the nervous system adapts to chronic low-level isolation. Oxytocin pathways quiet. Reward circuitry associated with social bonding underactivates. The world becomes less warm, even if it's more predictable. Here's the cost. Protection without recalibration turns into confinement. When your system flags connection is unsafe, you avoid the very interactions that would update the model. You stay inside a loop where your beliefs about people are never truly tested, and untested beliefs feel certain. Certainty feels powerful. It's rigid. You might tell yourself that most people are unreliable, that depth is rare, that emotional intelligence is uncommon, and sometimes you're right. But if that narrative becomes global, it stops being discernment and starts being defense. The hidden downside is this: the same wall that filters out harm also filters out intimacy. And intimacy is not a luxury for the nervous system, it's regulation. Safe connection literally lowers cortisol levels, stabilizes heart rate variability, and increases resilience under stress. When you remove that input long-term, your baseline stress tolerance narrows. So the very strategy designed to protect you from emotional dysregulation can slowly make you more sensitive to it. That's the tension. You don't hate people. Your body is bracing for impact, but bracing forever is exhausting. There's another layer here that challenges self-perception. If you consistently distrust others, you may also struggle to trust yourself in relational space, because trust is reciprocal. If you don't believe others can handle your truth, you might also doubt your ability to recover if they don't. That doubt hides beneath independence, and independence can become identity. I'm just wired this way. I prefer a solitude. I don't need much. Some of that may be authentic, but some of it is adaptation that never got revisited. The nervous system is not fixed, it is plastic. It updates through repeated safe experiences, through micro-moments of co-regulation, through eye contact that doesn't judge, through vulnerability that doesn't get weaponized. But updating requires mild discomfort. It requires allowing the smoke detector to stay silent long enough to gather evidence. That doesn't mean ignoring red flags. It means distinguishing between present danger and historical echo. Your body learned to distrust for a reason. Respect that reason, but don't let it run your entire relational future. Because the goal isn't to trust everyone. It's to build a nervous system flexible enough to evaluate accurately. Flexibility is strength. If you've been telling yourself you dislike people, pause. Notice the sensations beneath that label. Is it irritation or is it tension? Is it judgment or is it anticipatory defense? Language shapes identity. When you say, "I hate people," you reinforce a story. When you say, "My nervous system is cautious," you introduce space for growth. That shift is small, but it changes trajectory. You are not broken.
You are adapted, and adaptation can evolve. The question isn't whether people deserve your trust. The deeper question is whether your nervous system deserves a chance to update its map. Because somewhere beneath the caution, beneath the skepticism, beneath the detachment, there is still a part of you wired for connection. That wiring never disappears, it just goes quiet. And when it finally feels safe enough to speak again, you may realize you never hated people at all. You were just protecting something that mattered. If this resonated, stay close to these conversations, not for comfort, for clarity.